apply Section 241 of our Constitution in deploying our officers, our military officers, to back up the police, both to quell the protest and initially sent to the North River. What exactly is the state of our police force? There are so many things that are flying around gossip that, number one, our officers, police officers could be demoralized. Number two, is there a situation that you feel the police at some point are very hesitant to execute some of the assignments they're given because of lack of morale? And you as a CS, the accusation that you would not have been boosting the morale of our police officers. What exactly is the state of our police force?
Professor?
Mr. Speaker, yes, we have applied Article 241 twice. And I think there is nothing abnormal with that, Mr. Speaker, because that is why that article exists. So that whenever there is need, the National Police Service may request the support of the Kenya Defence Forces to handle either an emergency or a disastrous situation. On the case of the North Rift, it was important to get the support of the KDF because at that time the National Police Air Wing had collapsed. Right now it's operational. We didn't have air assets. We didn't have adequate long range and manned aerial vehicles, and therefore we needed the support of the military. It's police-led. What the military has been supportive in the periphery is police-led. Even in terms of numbers, we have 4,500 police officers against less than 1,000 KDF officers. With regard to the recent emergency we had, again, and our calling of the KDF was simply to put them on standby should they be needed. And you've seen they have not been needed. But it was a precaution because the criminals who wanted to burn Parliament were also threatening to burn State House and other critical installations. So if that was not reason enough to put KDF on standby legally, I don't think any other situation would have met threshold, because what we faced in the last month, in our view, was existential threat, not just to the arms of government, but to the state itself. And therefore, the police is in good shape. There are issues of welfare, which we are handling. I've already mentioned about the salary increments, which we have started implementing. There's issues around housing. There are also issues about leave and so forth and so on. Medication, I've just talked about the hospital that we've established for them, fully fledged level 4 hospital. We have one for the border police again, which again we operationalized under my leadership in Kanyonyo for the formed up units. So yes, there is more to be done, but it is not true to say that the police force is demoralized. They have done a good job, and when it's necessary, we have called in the KDF in accordance with the law when we feel that the situation is an emergency. I submit.
Proceed.
I thank the Honorable Speaker for giving me this opportunity. Professor, and Honorable the Chairman, I want to rely on section, I'm on this side, Professor. I want to rely on Section 6 and Section 7 of the Act in terms of suitability of the candidate the opposition has been nominated. And in this respect, Honorable Speaker, I want to take the Minister in terms of suitability on his credibility in terms of respecting what he says, in terms of implementing what he says. Because this is the second time he's been given a chance. Speaker, I want also the nominee to know that absence of war is not necessarily peace. Whatever is happening in the North Rift, Honorable Speaker, there is relative peace. There's no war, but it might not necessarily mean peace. What am I saying, Honorable Speaker? The candidate, as an example, the candidate came to the North Rift. We had engagement as leaders of the North Rift, and specifically West Pokot County, as an example of the entire country. I don't know what happened or what the minister did in the other places, but possibly maybe he did what he did in West Pokot, which is we agreed on a number of issues, Honorable Speaker, in terms of strategies of bringing peace, including establishment of sub-locations or bringing even the security near to the people so that we avoid the Shakawala things and so on. And the minister agreed with the Honorable Speaker with us in West Pokot. And we also agreed to put security in strategic areas. It might happen in other parts of the country. The minister agreed. And Speaker, nothing happened. Nothing has happened so far. Now, if Parliament sees it fit and approves the minister again for this position, what's going to happen? What is the minister going to do different, Honorable Speaker, to gain credibility among people, among Kenyans themselves, who might feel that the minister lied to them? And finally, Speaker, take home for the minister. This idea of giving police accounting as an accounting or to manage their own money as an accounting officer, I want the minister to take home in terms of the security, the strategic security of this country. What does that mean in terms of security of this country? Going into the future, there are critics, Honorable Speaker, that say, how do you give the police the gun and you also give them the money? What's going to happen? It might pose a serious security in this country going forward, maybe many years in the future. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is true
Those
that...
are just two simple questions. Did you honor what you did and said in Pokot? And is the police fund tenable? Very simple.
Mr. Speaker, it is true that some of the things that I promised have not been realized, especially the issue of operationalization of new administrative units. But it is also true that some of the things I promised have been realized, and I thought the Honourable Member would be kind enough to notify the House and the country that during the same consultations I had promised that we will provide, train and equip 200 National Police Reservists for West Pokot, which we did. Number two, we had promised to set up a security camp at a place formerly called Lami Nyeusi, which is now called Lami Nyeupe, which we did, and so many other things we did. But the issue of the units is outstanding, and not just for West Pokot, but also for a few other counties, including some parts of Baringo, Samburu, and a few other counties benefit from the operation. I think there's a problem with giving the National Police Service money and control over resources relating to their operations. The operational budgets of the police must be run by the National Police Service themselves and not by the ministry, not by the office of the president. And in my view, if there are issues of lack of effectiveness, it is not because the police have their own budget. If anything, it should help them even work more efficiently. Therefore, the question should be, now that the police have their operational budget, what prevents them from serving the people of Kenya in a better manner? And those are issues that we'll be looking at if we are reappointed.
Because Parliament oversights the use of that money. Gikaria?
Thank you, Chair. Professor Kindiki, in the recent past in this demonstration, two young men, Michael Chirunga Navoli and another young man called Kevin Maganga, were shot dead in the court. The family has been trying to get some information from
based on the independent, the IPOA is not receiving required information from the police service. This has posed a great challenge to IPOA, executive its oversight mandate. If approved for these appointments, what steps will you take to ensure
challenge to IPOA, executing its oversight mandate? If approved for this appointment, Dr. Kindiki, what steps will you take to ensure that the two institutions work seamlessly for the benefit of Kenyans? And secondly, how will you strengthen IPOA so as to execute its mandate? Second, the Honourable Chair, is about urban criminal gang activities. In the urban areas, particularly in Nakuru, a criminal gang called Confirm, which by what the citizens claim has brought about 5 deaths in every month and hundreds of injuries. Maybe if you're approved and confirmed, what are the steps that you'll take to reduce the increase of criminal activities in urban areas, and particularly in Nakuru, specifically the confirmed criminal gang? Thank you, Chair.
Professor. Mr. Speaker, on the first issue, the relationship between IPOA and the National Police Service is an ongoing conversation, and it's not unusual. It happens all over the world that the police and the bodies oversighting them have normal institutional tensions. We have, during our tenure in office, we have encouraged these institutions to work together because each one of them is playing an important role. It is the same problem we had between the police service and the Police Service Commission. And we did a lot of work and around that and were able to get a win-win situation where the Commission and the police service are working together. So we'll apply the same methods if we are reappointed to make sure that IPOA gets the support it requires from the NPS. And going forward, we will support IPOA in terms of more resources, more capacity, but also just brokering the institutional goodwill between themselves and the police. The second question, Mr. Speaker, is on the criminal gangs. It is true. We have had a gang in Nakuru known as Confirm. And urban crime is a major issue. When I took over as the CS for Interior, October 2022, there was a lot of gang violence and gang crime in Nairobi. We've been able to reduce and suppress the Nairobi urban criminal activity significantly. We hope that the Nakuru matter could also be resolved. And before I was dismissed from office, I had a meeting with the leaders of Nakuru County, and we had agreed that according to the feedback the leaders gave us, we needed to change the command because sometimes many of these performance issues are based on the right command. So we are going to work on it to ensure that we eliminate that gang and other urban gangs in Mombasa and a few other towns that are suffering the same problem.
Robert Mbui. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Professor, Kenya's constitution borrows very heavily from the US one, particularly issues to do with the Bill of Rights. And you swore to uphold this constitution and protect it. Recently, saw in the US that a gunman tried to shoot a presidential nominee and was actually brought down. But despite that, and even missed, but despite that, the head of Secret Service resigned their post. Now in Kenya, during your tenure as CS, over 100 Kenyans have been killed, murdered by the police. You know that maybe over 1,000 people have been injured. And property worth billions of shillings has been destroyed. Not to forget that a lot of Kenyans have also been abducted, and as we are talking, there are still people, families that are still looking for their loved ones. Now, we did see that the Inspector General of Police resigned. Do you think that as a CS, you should not also have taken responsibility, political responsibility for that failure that the resignation confirms, and also either resigned or declined the appointment? It's also important to note that during these demos that were held, a lot of people were shot, and there is clamor and request and for justice, because you have the bullets, and you know that every bullet that comes from a gun can be traced. Why have we not seen arrests and arraignment in court of the police officers that are accused or that were involved in these shootings? Because that would appease the public a little bit. Allow me, Mr. Speaker, to also point out that the CS has had, the nominee has had a very illustrious career. And, PhD, done consultancy all over. And when you are here for the approval hearings in 2022, after all those many years of working, your wealth was at 544 million. Now, 2 years later, your wealth now is at 694 million. That is a whopping 150 million shillings more. Maybe you could explain to us, is this increase probably related to the office that you hold? It would be important for us to know. And finally, Mr. Speaker,
too many questions, Robert.
Mr. Speaker, just one last one, because we are doing very well with time, Mr. Speaker. Just one last one, which is because I'm just picking out some of the things that some of the members have said on the matters of insecurity and criminal gangs, Mr. Speaker, that have been out there mugging our people. There's burglaries, in the North Reef, there are all these issues of cattle rustling and all that, which you have admitted there are issues. Now, my question is, when you know that we have such insecurity in the country, what was the logic behind making a decision to send 1,000 police officers to go and secure Haiti when Kenya has a problem? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Professor.
Mr. Speaker, those are three questions. The first one, the Honorable Boy asked about whether I should have resigned. The example the member gave about US, where the candidate for presidency was nearly killed, raises a number of issues. One, he says the person who attempted that was killed. That demonstrates use of force, even in our local context, is allowed, because nobody raised issues with that criminal who was wanted to kill Donald Trump. He was shot dead without questions. Number two,
4 million.
Now, 2 years the honourable member has said that the director of the Secret Service resigned.
694 million.
But also drew a parallel and said our IG also resigned.
Maybe you could
the minister did not resign in the US. I don't know why the Kenyan minister must resign.
It would be important for us to
and nobody asked the minister to resign, because ministers don't instruct operations, they instruct policy. I can only resign if my policy instruction is unconstitutional or illegal. Then, on the question of those unfortunate incidents when Kenyans lost their lives and the quest for justice, I strongly believe that there must be justice, and every death that occurred must be accounted for. However, Mr. Speaker, the process of putting together criminal investigations, including forensic evidence, is not something that can be done, can be rushed. It takes a bit of time all over the world, not just in Kenya. I believe IPOA should help the country to get closure, and I have promised, if I am reappointed, I'll encourage the collaboration and support and goodwill between IPOA and the police in terms of providing information so that justice is served. I have also been asked about my wealth, which has increased from 544 million to 694 million. It is true First, let me start by saying that I have not benefited from any improper business. I have not done any business with government. Let's start from there. I have not applied for any tender by myself, by proxy, by relative, or by anybody. Mr. Speaker, before I was appointed, my wealth was at 544 million. I said at that time, which I still do now, that I have run a business, which today I do not participate in that business. I don't practice law, but my law firm is alive and working, and much of that revenue has actually come through the revenue from my law firm, which is still active but being managed by other people. I think all my salary and allowances have been spent in paying bills. Therefore, most of the increment in my net worth is because of three things. One, the legal fees, some of which was actually pending by the time I was being appointed. And I said it here, that there are some unpaid legal fees, which some of them were paid. In fact, I remember 2 months after I was appointed, one of the clients paid a significant amount of legal fees, which had been pending. Other than that, I do small businesses and so forth and so on. None of my money has come from the public except the salary and the allowances that I'm entitled to. Lastly, on Haiti, it is true that the government of Kenya, through the National Security Council, decided to deploy our officers in Haiti pursuant to a request by the UN Security Council and the UN General Assembly. These are international obligations. It has not affected our operations, and it is not true to say that since there are problems in Kenya, we cannot also do our international obligations, because all countries in the world do have security issues. They have security matters. Even the country you consider safest has its own security matters. And therefore, it is a great honor for our officers to serve in Haiti. So far, they are doing a good job. I believe they will profile Kenya properly. They will bring honor to our country. And that deployment has not affected our operational capabilities. I submit.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you.
Like your neighbor, ask one question.
I'll ask only one question, Mr. Speaker. Professor Kithure Kindiki, in your first stint as CS Interior, you were associated with strong statements, such as "we will crush you," you'll be met with the full force of the law, "we will deal with you firmly and deadly," and many other words like that. Statements which seem to extrajudicial action and the use of excessive force, because if you tell people we'll crush you, the police will crush you, that's what it will entail. As you see now, there's a new awakening in this country about what public officers are saying. How different will you be if we approve you? Secondly, you are also the civilian face among the police and the security organs that we have. But as you took up this job, probably, Professor Kindiki, you became more of a police officer, not a civilian within. You are donning police uniform, you are all over police choppers, and you behave like a police officer, which probably took you away from the police direction that you're supposed to give the forces, and became more of an operational leader instead of a policy director in the force. How will you be different on this? And probably lastly, you are more in the sky than on earth. You know, when you want to give policy direction, you want to give guiding, you need to be in office, have meetings, boardrooms, and give policy direction. But you have said you actually went to Lamu 21 days, 21 times in 21 months. And probably in the operation field more than where you are required to give, operational or to give policy guidance and direction. And that's why the police force and the administration, national government administration, is not properly coordinated. How different will you be when we approve you as CS? Thank you.
Professor?
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I've been asked to say whether I'll change my language. Mr. Speaker, I need to clarify that it is true I have used very, very unique language. But, Mr. Speaker, this is security language. And the people I address when I use those terminologies are not the law-abiding citizens of Kenya. The people I address with that difficult terminology or unique terminology are terrorists, bandits, organized criminals. Those are the people I tell will crush you, and I mean it. Last time I appeared before here, the member for Samburu West asked me what I will do in Kurkuru and other places when criminals descend into gorges, and I'll say I'll flatten the gorges. We've done a bit of that. There were places in Baringo, Corcoran Hills, a place called Tandare. We've done a bit of that. There were places in Baringo, Corcoran Hills, a place called Tandare, a place called Ngelecha, and in Samburu, the Malaso Valley and other places where criminals would always retreat and have a field day, operate from there. We've neutralized them and removed them from there. So, the use of force is permitted by law, depending on who that force is used against and in what circumstances. And the escalation methods are used. You start by asking them to surrender. If they don't, you use other methods until if they challenge you or they want to kill police officers, the police officers will kill them before they kill the officer. That is the law. Mr. Speaker, on the second issue, I have been there at headquarters driving policy in boardrooms around the house. I've had so many meetings in our campuses in Tiganjo, in Embakasi, Roiro, Police Leadership Academy. But I've also been in the field more. Why? To disseminate policy to our forward operating bases, to our camps, to our officers in the field, in the counties. And even in the counties, before I even start my meetings, I would sit with the county security committee in a boardroom, disseminate the policy, because they are the ones who will be left to implement. And I have also been in the most dangerous spots in our territory with our officers in the front line. Why? To give them moral support, that we have not posted them there to die. We have posted them there to protect the country. And there is no greater morale booster than for the security minister to go and visit the officers, have lunch with them, encourage them, and tell them what the government policy is and what the government thinks about them. So it has been very rewarding. I will be back in the normal manner, but I will, of course, balance between my headquarters work and also the field work. Lastly, I've been asked to land. I have always landed. For every flight, I have landed. And finally, on the issue of uniform, what I wear is tactical attire. because there are some things which protective clothing that you need tactical wear to be able to have protective clothing and protective facilities because you're in a dangerous situation. I don't wear that on the streets of Nairobi. And also, I have been in not just police helicopters, but military helicopters, because the law provides that the security minister be facilitated when he is in dangerous situations. The Minister for Interior, the Minister for Defense must be facilitated because the nature of our work is we are exposed to risk and danger by virtue of office. Otherwise, I do not fancy it's only that it's all in a day's job.
Murugara. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On a CS nominee, let me take you away from the police officers, the bandits, and all these other insecurity matters you're dealing with, back to national government administration. I recollect very well that when you were here, we actually questioned you on it lastly during the vetting and emphasized that the nerve center of the national government administration is in the villages. That we do have very serious workers in the villages who possibly are not recognized by the national government, but who play a key role in the service and security provision and everything else, so that we can avert incidents like the Shakahola and the quarry incidents we've talked about. Here I'm talking about the village elders and the Nyumba Kumi workers, whom you use extensively, 24 hours every day, every month, and every year, and in a form of service which is very similar to servitude or some form of modern-day slavery. These people are not remunerated. Your response that time was that a policy was going to be put in place immediately and that they would actually start getting a form of remuneration. The question I have to you is, how far has that gone and when should these people expect their paycheck? Whether check, whether M-Pesa, whether whatever is going to be, when should they expect to be paid?
Mr. Speaker, sir, we have finalized the Village Elders Bill 2024. It is one of the 12 pieces of legislation that are awaiting cabinet approval for transmission to Parliament, and therefore that matter will be sorted out in the shortest time possible. I submit.
Waziri, I want you to again go back to Haiti, where we actually deployed almost 600 police officers. My fear now is that with what is happening around there, the fact one of my voters at home has one of his son actually deployed. And the question is, how secure? Do you have special security insurance for this particular, just in case something has happened? Of course, that has led to a deficit of police officers. That's why when you had demonstration here, you had to get in the army because we don't have enough police officers, so because some of them are away. Secondly, I also have had a case in North Rift. In fact, my colleague is just walking in. The North Rift, where you have this police reservists have been disarmed, and yet we have problems in North Rift. And those are my borders, and we have that problem. And yet you have actually disarmed the police reservists. What are you doing about that?
Professor, will take Daoud, note the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The CS nominee, you have promised regarding passports a couple of times, and you know passports are the most important. You initially said within a day, within a week, within 2 weeks, but apparently the passport issue has not been sorted out. The other issue is regarding the IDs. Your department has rolled out that IDs will be 10 years, whereas we have known all along IDs did not have an expiry date. What informed the decision for that one? Because now we've got MYKE number, which has been already declared unconstitutional. But what was the point of launching MYKE number